Hello, Arizona. Welcome to The Race, Politics in Arizona. I'm Anthony Gonzalez.
And I'm Shuron, Harvey.
Today we are joined by Tom Jenney, who is the State Director of Americans for Prosperity. Thanks, Tom, for coming on the show.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, Tom. All right, Tom, tell us a little bit about the Ron Barber ads that you guys have been airing.
Well, we've been my organization, Americans for Prosperity, has been doing a huge air campaign in terms of about $600,000 in January alone, making sure that the public out there is holding Ann Kirkpatrick and Ron Barber accountable for their support of Obamacare. So we've been really hitting the airwaves with that. We've been hitting a lot of television stations and doing some radio as well. And the big thing we're trying to really get out there in terms of a message is that these folks, Ann Kirkpatrick and Ron Barber, are trying to tell voters and they're trying to tell people that they are trying to fix Obamacare. And our point is that we can't fix it. It's a mess. It's fundamentally messed up. And so our other big concern with Ron Barber is that he doesn't seem to understand exactly how fundamentally destructive this piece of legislation is. He's trying to tinker at the edges. And, you know, he's done some symbolic moves, but at the end of the day, this thing's going to have to be taken out root and branch. This Obamacare legislation, some people call it the Affordable Care Act, but I think we all understand that it's not affordable. This thing is a disaster. It's going to be a disaster for the elderly who are on Medicare. It's going to be a disaster for low-income people who are going to be pushed into Medicaid, which is a failing government program. It's going to be bad for people in the middle class who are forced to buy more and more expensive insurance plans and not get very much. They're loaded with mandates, things people don't want to buy. And yet they're going to have to pay higher premiums. In many cases, they're going to get higher premiums and higher deductibles at the same time. And that's not supposed to happen in insurance. Usually there's a trade-off. If you got higher premiums, you should at least be getting a lower deductible. Unfortunately, people are seeing both, higher premiums and higher deductibles. So it's a gigantic mess. And then there's a whole lot of people, I'm one of them, I'm one of 6 million Americans right now, so far and counting, who have lost the insurance that they liked. Remember, President Obama said, if you like your plan, you can keep it, period. Well, he lied. And it's called the lie of the year, and that's what Politico called it. And frankly, he lied to me. I'm one of the 6 million Americans who had a plan, a healthcare plan that I liked, and I could not keep it.
All right. Now, Tom, tell us what are the goals for your organization and what is the purpose?
The big point of what we do is to educate citizens, and we have to mobilize a huge grassroots army. We've got about 70,000 people in Arizona who are on our membership rolls, who take action with us sometimes, and we really got to get that entire base of people mobilized and going door to door, hitting the phone banks, making sure that we're reaching out to people who are on the fence in Arizona on the big issues that face this country. And there are a lot of people out there who haven't made up their minds. They're not sure because they're getting messages from both sides. They're getting messages. They understand something's wrong with Obamacare, but they still want to believe that it's okay or that it will be okay, or if they just fix the website, it's going to be okay. And we've got to educate them and make sure that they understand, no, this thing needs to be fundamentally restructured, if not repealed.
Let's take another branch with Obamacare at this point. The view that we've seen is that Obamacare is here to stay. Now, what can actually happen to make sure that, you know, this is changed fundamentally from where it is now, and how can Congress affect that at this point since it's already been enacted?
The difficult thing right now, well, I guess I should start by saying that the president is fixing the law a little bit at a time by executive fiat. So without even going back to Congress like he's supposed to, he's actually fixing, and now he's not really fixing it, but he's making tweaks to the whole thing. In many cases, tweaks that are not even allowed within the parameters of the legislation itself. So the fact is almost everybody is going to want to fix this thing radically. There's all kinds of things in this law that are not good even for Democrats, even for liberal Democrats. There are things that don't make sense even from their point of view, and let alone from the point of view of the rest of the economy and conservatives and people who are looking at this thing. You know, about 95% of the people in the country are going to be adversely affected by this. It's possible that at the margin the legislation may help maybe 2-3% of the population. It's possible once they get the website fixed, if they get the website fixed. It's possible some number of people are actually going to get help by this, but the 9 out of 10 of us, 19 out of 20 Americans are going to see harm. They're going to be harmed by this legislation. So it's going to be fixed. I don't know if it's going to be fixed. It's going to be tinkered with in the coming years, and I think by everybody. Democrats are going to want to fix it. Republicans are going to want to fix or abolish it. And so this is going to be the gift that keeps on giving in terms of legislation, because it's just a mess.
All right, now tell me, Tom, is there any way the community can get involved to help with your fight against the Help Fix Obamacare?
Yeah, the biggest thing people can do is join our organization and start getting on our email lists. We're at www.americansforprosperity.org. Here in Arizona, we use aztaxpayers.org, aztaxpayers.org. But if you Google Americans for Prosperity in Arizona, you'll find us. And we just encourage people to get on our email list and start getting plugged in. We've got great fights we're doing with federal level issues. And we've got great fights we're doing at the state level, at the legislative level. There's a lot of things we can do in Arizona to start fixing things. There's a guy named Representative Adam Quasman right now in the legislature. And Quasman's got a bill this time which would basically allow people in Arizona, taxpayers in Arizona, to write off as a deduction on their Arizona income taxes the amount of money that they're going to be penalized by Obamacare for not signing up for an Obamacare compliant insurance plan. So he would basically, for a large number of Arizonans, possibly wipe out the individual mandate penalty. It's a great piece of legislation. It's something we ought to do here. So we're going to be heavily involved in that fight, and there's lots of other good things we can do.
Well, I'm very glad you brought that up, because actually we did an interview, me and Shuron, we did an interview with Adam Quasman, and he brought that up. And unfortunately, it was during the exact time that what was going on at the state convention that they were doing the censure of John McCain at that time. So it was so loud that most of the conversation was just overpowered by that. But I believe that is a very good bill that will affect us, and it's a deduction. So at the state level, what other issues is Americans for Prosperity championing this session that's going on?
Directly related to Obamacare. And there are a lot of issues we deal with that don't have anything to do with Obamacare. But related to Obamacare itself, we are working with Phil Lovis and some other legislators who are trying to make sure that the navigators, the Obamacare navigators, these are people who are essentially trying to guide people through the website because the website's such a mess. These folks, in many cases, are left-wing community organizers. This is some people have called this a jobs program for Obamacare, for Obama's organizers. And so the idea is what we want to do is make sure that these people actually have criminal background checks. Under Obamacare, these navigators do not have to have criminal background checks. Here in Arizona, we think they probably ought to. And especially because what if you have convicted fraudsters, people who have made their living in a dirty way through fraud, they're convicted felons, they're rip-off artists. What if these people are acting as navigators? And so now they've got access to very, very sensitive information, health information, financial information for people who are trying to use the Obamacare website, healthcare.gov. It's a notoriously leaky website. It's a website. I won't use the exact terminology, but John McAfee, the guy, the famous antivirus software guy, he said this thing is just he said it's basically a dream. It's a dream for hackers. So this is a very notorious website in terms of being leaky, and you've got people who could be felons who are going to be and fraudsters who are going to be getting people's very sensitive information. So we think at the very least we ought to be able to put criminal background checks for those people.
Okay. Well, look, we're gonna show right now. We're gonna show the viewers our latest attempt to try and access the healthcare.gov website. So we're gonna put that on. So anyway, that shows that the website wasn't working at the time that we tried to access it. So we were just trying to inform our viewers of all the troubles that we have and other things like that. So is there an actual Arizona-based site yet, or is it just through healthcare.gov?
Well, one of the good things the Governor Jan Brewer has done, and we're not always happy with her. You know, we're a nonpartisan organization. We're not in favor of one party or the other, and we've been pretty tough on Governor Jan Brewer. She pushed through the Medicaid expansion under Obamacare. We were very unhappy about that. But if I can say something good about Governor Brewer, she did decline at the end of 2012 to do the state insurance exchange, to do a state-funded, Arizona-funded insurance exchange under Obamacare. And so the good news is we threw that hot potato to the federal government. So what people have to do in Arizona is go to the healthcare.gov website and use a federal website, which doesn't seem to be working very well, as we just saw. So that's what's going on in Arizona, is that people have to use the federal. What's very interesting, and we're going to see this very soon, is there's a couple of lawsuits across the country that are going to bring into question whether the federal government can actually, not even constitutionally, the question is whether it's even in the statute of Obamacare, legally, for the federal government to set up these exchanges and tax businesses, put the employer mandate and put the taxes together, and also whether they can even award these subsidies through a federal exchange in a state. It's very clear in Obamacare, in the legislation, that states can do this. Right or wrong, it's clear in the wording of the language that states can set up their own exchanges, and then they can tax businesses for the business penalty, and they can also give the subsidies to individuals who are trying to buy these plans through the website. But it's also very clear in the legislation, and clear from the intent of people like Max Baucus, who actually wrote this thing, that they did not empower the federal government to do exactly what it's doing in Arizona right now, which is to set up its own website, punish employers, and hand out subsidies. So when that case works its way through up to the U.S. Supreme Court, that could overturn things in a big way. Overnight, the Arizona, the healthcare.gov, the federal website, could be illegal.
All right. Tom, tell us a little bit about what you're doing to help keep the government in check with the balancing of the budget, because they're just wasting the taxpayers' money. What are y'all doing to help keep them in check?
Well, at the federal level, we've been very active in trying to keep the sequester cuts. And as you know, I'm sure you know, the sequester cuts were really the first time in about a decade, maybe longer, that the federal government actually tried to control spending. And unfortunately, as you all know, that they threw that to the wind. So it's very, very disappointing. And we're going to keep coming back over that target. But that was very disappointing. We really did not like the Ryan Murray plan. It was very disappointing to see that happen, and we fought against it, and we'll keep fighting on that front. Here at the state level, we've got a lot we can do. The good news is on some days we have a conservative legislature. We've got conservative legislators. On some days we have a conservative governor. And the good news is we have a better chance here, I think, of staying within the boundaries of a decent budget. Our target this year, just to give you an idea, we don't think the state of Arizona budget should grow faster than about 3%. Anything beyond that is unreasonable. The Arizona economy might grow 3% this year, maybe. We don't think that the state budget has any business, and legislators have no business increasing their budget, the government budget, faster than the economy is growing.
All right, well, we will be right back with Tom Jenney from the Americans for Prosperity organization. Welcome back to The Race. We're here with Tom Jenney, the State Director of Americans for Prosperity. Tom, we're going to move to a little bit different direction for this little segment here. What are you guys doing for the 2014 election cycle that will help to influence, one way or the other, what's going to happen?
Well, the first thing I should do is throw out a disclaimer. We're a nonpartisan organization. We don't support candidates. Our big mission is citizen education, but there's a lot of people out there who are on the fence about the big issues facing this country. And we think it's our duty to go out there and try to educate them. So we're going door to door throughout southern Arizona, throughout large parts of Arizona with iPads. We got teams out there with iPads doing surveys on people, finding out, do they like Obamacare, do they not like it, what parts of it they don't like, what part of federals, do they think that the federal government can fix its problems by spending more, by cutting taxes. We're trying to figure out where people are so that then we can come back over those same targets and reach out to those people with more information and make sure that we're getting them up to speed, because there's a lot of folks out there, frankly, they're not the kind of people who are watching this show. They're not the kind of people who listen to talk radio, political talk radio, or watch Fox News, things like that. There's a lot of people out there who just would prefer that the political world leave them alone and go away. But the reality is, in a modern democracy, you've got a duty to get informed. And so we're figuring out who are the people out there who are sitting on the fence, who don't understand these issues. And then we're going to go back and make sure that we give them enough education that they can start to understand why economic freedom, why a healthcare system that's based on the free market, why these are good solutions for our society. And so we're, like I said, heavy door-to-door action. We're doing a lot of phone banking. We show up a lot of times at different clubs and different places, and we'll just throw a big pile of cell phones down on the table and have people start calling. Our systems are generally very, very easy to use, very user-friendly, and the whole thing is reaching out to people. And there's a huge middle out there that we really need to talk to. And our organization on the 501c3 side, our foundation, we do a lot of get out the vote efforts as well. And I think you can expect to see us do that quite a bit this year. But again, I should remind everyone, we're not an election year organization. We're on the ground here in Arizona year in, year out. It doesn't matter if it's an even numbered year or an odd numbered year. This is a big fight, and it's a long-term fight to educate people about the free market and about the great things we can do.
Tom, what are y'all doing to cut the income tax rate and the corporate tax rate? Because that's passed on to the small business owners and on the workers. So what are you doing to cut that so we don't have to pay all those taxes?
Well, you said it right there. The first thing people need to understand is that these taxes are ultimately passed along to other people. So that's a huge educational hurdle, because a lot of people think, the government's taxing these corporations. So they think, well, that's just happening to a corporation. It's not going to happen to me. Well, that's the reason you don't get a job, is because that corporation at the margin can't hire you because they don't have any money left. So it comes out of your paycheck. It comes out of the prices. If corporations are taxed, then the prices of everything they sell to people are going to go up, which means that, the mom shopping at Safeway, or the mom shopping at the local supermarket, she's suffering. More money is coming out of her paycheck to pay for those corporate income taxes. So we think it's absolutely imperative that Arizona, and eventually the United States as a whole, the federal government, reduce corporate income taxes. We've got a long way to go in terms of reducing personal income taxes as well. Here in Arizona, we'd like to put those income taxes on a glide path to zero. We'd like the rate to eventually be zero. We think it's best for people to tax consumption rather than income.
Okay, so I have a question on that. So there's a consumption-based tax system that is going through the House, I believe, this session, the U.S. Congress, for H.R. 25, the fair tax. What is your position on that, and what would your organization support legislation that would push it towards that, or be on the fence, or how would that work?
We support fundamental tax reform. We've got to have fundamental tax reform in this country, and we like the fair tax. We also like radical restructuring the income tax so that it's not the fair tax, but the flat tax. So we like both proposals. Either way, there's a lot of countries that have done flat tax, and it seems to work in those countries in order to radically simplify people's income tax forms. So either way, we need radical reform on the tax front at the federal level. Here in the state of Arizona, it's mostly, I think, as I said before, a way of putting these taxes on a glide slope. Getting the revenue from other places, if necessary, cutting spending, and putting the income taxes in Arizona on a glide slope to zero is where we want to go. There's states like Texas that are much more competitive economically than we are because they're not taxing income. And so we think we've got to be like that. We don't have a port like Texas. We don't have endless amounts of private land like they do in Texas. A lot of our land is owned by the federal government. So if we're going to be competitive in the international and national economies, we've got to have a great, great tax code. And the best way to do that in Arizona is to eliminate the income tax.
Okay, and I want to go to another type of legislation. We just covered taxes. Now let's cover what just happened last week, which was the Farm Bill. How do you feel about that situation that occurred? And now I know it's on its way to the president's desk to be signed, unless he did sign it in the last couple of days. But what is your take on that legislation?
I can't remember what the author's name was, but there was an author a few years ago who wrote a book called Moscow on the Mississippi. basically about how farm subsidies in America were at the antithesis of American free market capitalism. It was a whole lot of crony capitalist spending for farmers. And frankly, a lot of people in Republican Midwestern states got that money. And anyway, I think in the long run, we've got to get rid of these subsidies. We don't want to have our businesses, our agro businesses in America dependent upon government. It's not a good way to be. And ultimately, I think we need to have a freer trade system in the world where we're not dumping at ridiculously low prices, dumping products onto foreign markets in places where local farmers are just struggling to get by. So I think the repeal of farm subsidies is something that's going to be good here in America in the long run and also abroad.
Now, what are your views on expanding the school choice?
School choice is hugely important. School choice is really the answer. There's a lot of education reform. People are constantly talking about how we got to change the curriculum, or we got to get this textbook in our schools, or we got to get this textbook out of our schools, or we've got to do Common Core. We're totally against Common Core, but there's all of these solutions, or so-called solutions, that are thrown out there. And at the very, very base of what we're trying to do, what we should be trying to do, is to give every parent and every child a choice of where do they go to school, so that the schools that are serving those children, so that those schools are competing and their management is open to competitive pressures and not shielded from competitive pressures, so that the management in those schools is vibrant and trying to take advantage of the best practices. And the only way you get best practices widely throughout an industry is if there's competition. And so we've got to absolutely open up our school system to even more school choice. Currently in Arizona, only about, about 15% of children are in choice schools. They're in charter schools or they're in independent private schools. And we need to get to a much, much higher threshold. We're getting there. As currently what's happening, if you talk to parents, maybe 1 in 6 parents right now is in a choice school. We need to get higher than that, so that every parent, no matter how poor the neighborhood, no matter what the social circumstances, so that every parent understands that, hey, I don't have to keep my kids in this failing school. I can put my kids somewhere else where they're going to do a better job.
Tom, we've got a little bit of time left, so I would like to give you the opportunity to go ahead and tell our viewers where they can, find your organization, what your organization stands for, and just let them be able to access you guys here in Arizona or on a national level, since we do get a lot of viewers online.
We would love to have people come and volunteer with us. Like I said, we're going door to door. We're doing phone banks all over this state. We'd love to have volunteers. Our website is www.americansforprosperity.org. That's americansforprosperity.org. If you click under state chapters, you can sign up right here in Arizona, and we would love to have people help us out.
Okay, well, we'd like to thank you for coming on, Tom. We think you're doing a great thing for our community.
Yes, thank
Please
you very
keep
much.
it up. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you for
And we
letting me
look
be
forward
here.
to having you on again in the future. And we're going to show our viewers one of your commercials that's going to be airing. And we're going to close out this episode of The Race. So have a good night, Arizona.
Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Glitches that plagued the rollout of the site.
Is still experiencing delays.
Not able to create accounts. It really is just poorly designed.
What if later, bigger glitches prevent my family's access to care? Or I can't get the surgery my doctor thinks I need because of some policy in Washington.
We have to pass the bill.
They passed it without knowing everything in it. Now some promises, keeping our doctors and plans, lower costs, are broken. Call Congressman Ron Barber. Tell him Washington can do better than Obamacare.